I've been a fan of true crime since I was a young kid. Well, not that young. I consumed episodes of Unsolved Mysteries the way some of my friends consume Big Macs, and read just about every Ann Rule book I could get my hands on. If you don't know Ann Rule, well, she's pretty much the queen of true crime. Most people that knew me, including my parents, found my interest in this dark subject matter a bit off-putting, and I can't say I blame them. Most 13-year-old boys back then were spending their time playing baseball or video games or hanging at the mall. For me, though, I can trace my unusual fascination with true crime back to a monumental event or series of events I experienced as a 9-year-old kid that would change my life forever. It was 1985. I was 9 years old, living in a comfortable house in a comfortable neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. Life in Los Angeles back then was great. We'd just experienced the triumphant 1984 Olympics. We had Magic and the Showtime Lakers, the Dodgers, and who could forget Muscle Beach? Sure, the city had its fair share of crime. Certainly by then crack had made the scene, and there was plenty of gang violence. But out in the valley, things were pretty sterile, at least for a kid like me living in a quiet suburban neighborhood. By June of that year, anyone reading the local newspapers would have certainly taken notice of the headlines regarding a seemingly unrelated string of random home invasion murders and attempted murders in the San Gabriel Valley, just northeast of downtown LA, in communities like Monterey Park and Monrovia. In all cases, the victims were seemingly targeted randomly, attacked in or near their own homes late at night by an assailant either as part of or independent of a robbery. The only information police had at the time came from the survivors of 2 different attacks who described the perpetrator as a Latino man with bad teeth. But I didn't read the newspaper, so I was oblivious to any of it. But on a fateful night in July, my whole world came crashing down. Me and my younger sister were home alone with a babysitter watching TV when a news report flashed on an image of a man's expressionless face, and it was the worst face I'd ever seen. He had dark, hollow eyes, and his face filled the entire screen as the newscaster's emotionless voice described the man people were calling the Valley Intruder, responsible for a number of random, horribly violent murders in and around the Los Angeles area. When I heard Valley Intruder, I assumed he meant the San Fernando Valley where I lived. I didn't realize at the time there was another valley just to the east of us. I attempted to process the information being presented to me. Though I hadn't watched any of them yet, I knew about all the slasher films, and of course everyone talked about the boogeyman, but that was all just made up stuff. This guy, this Valley Intruder, was a real human being killing real people in real life. When I asked my parents about what I'd seen the next day, they weren't adequately prepared to provide any meaningful answers. I don't think any parent was, because random strangers just didn't climb into people's houses and kill them for no reason. But this guy was, and by the end of July, the entire city was in a state of emergency. It was one of the hottest summers on record, and everyone slept with their windows shut and doors locked, lest this creep decide to make them his next victim. The sketch of him was everywhere. You simply couldn't escape it. All the kids on the street would play a stupid game. We'd dare each other to flip the newspaper on one of our neighbors' driveways over, certain we'd be greeted by his menacing face, but of course nobody wanted to see it. I slept on my parents' floor most of that summer, as many kids my age did, and I'd lie awake at night, listening for him, convinced he was coming for me. I'd jump up and peer out the window at even the smallest of sounds, usually to find nothing more than a neighborhood cat making his way across the street. In August, the media gave him a new name, and a fully realized monster emerged. What we learned about his crimes was jaw-dropping. Not only was he viciously attacking and mutilating his victims, but he was using their blood to draw a pentagram or scribble an ominous message on the wall, leaving no doubt who'd been there. In one case, he left behind a baseball cap with an AC/DC logo, another small detail that helped to frame his personality. Now, my vivid imagination conjured up images of a bloodthirsty maniac with bad teeth, driving around the LA freeways late at night, listening to loud, heavy metal music while stalking and killing his victims at random. Everything changed on the evening of August 24th, when a 13-year-old boy in the Orange County suburb of Mission Viejo noticed a suspicious car driving around his neighborhood and jotted down the license plate number. Investigators eventually located the car, swabbed it for fingerprints, and found enough to identify a suspect, a 25-year-old drifter from Texas named Richard Ramirez. Soon, his face was everywhere, and only a week later, Ramirez was captured by the residents of an East LA neighborhood who chased after him yelling, "El Matador!" beat him over the head with a tire iron, and turned him over to the police. We watched the events unfold live on TV and cheered when we saw Ramirez in the back of the police car with bandages around his head. It felt like we'd won the World Series. Everyone in Los Angeles, regardless of race or socioeconomic status, felt united in triumph.
That the killer would be caught by residents of one of our poorest communities only added to the adulation.
And then life went back to normal. Sort of. A few months later, on the morning of January 28, 1986, I watched the Space Shuttle Challenger explode on live TV shortly after liftoff, killing 7 astronauts in a split second. Like the Night Stalker, it was another stark reminder that life wasn't just going to be backyard barbecues and primetime sitcoms. The experience with the Night Stalker both fascinated and repelled me, and sowed the seeds for what would become a lifelong interest in true crime. I'm not really sure why. Perhaps exploring the darker side of human nature triggers something nostalgic in me. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment. Or maybe I'm just chasing the proverbial dragon, trying to recapture the sheer horror of the most terrifying moment of my life, the day I saw his face on TV. I'll let you know when I get there. Until then, thanks for watching.